Ethan Parker stood frozen in the center of a glittering hotel ballroom while his ex-wife systematically destroyed his reputation in front of 200 former classmates. Her voice carried across the marble floors, each word designed to cut deeper than the last. Background role in everyone's story. That's all you'll ever be, Ethan. The crowd's laughter felt like acid. Then a hand slipped through his arm, elegant fingers tightening possessively around his elbow, and a voice he knew from boardrooms, not ballrooms, spoke one impossible word: honey. Everything Ethan thought he knew about his quiet, ordinary life shattered in that single moment. If you want to see how a single father's worst nightmare became his greatest vindication, stay with me until the end. And please hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The invitation had arrived 3 weeks ago in a cream envelope that felt expensive between Ethan's fingers. 20-year college reunion, the kind of thing he'd normally throw away without opening, except Lily had gotten to the mail first. "Dad, what's a reunion?" she'd asked, her 9-year-old face scrunched in concentration as she studied the embossed lettering. Ethan had taken the envelope gently from her small hands, already composing his mental decline. And says already composing his mental decline. "It's when people from college get together to catch up. Are you going?" "Probably not, sweetheart. I've got work and you've got that science project due." "Dad," Lily had given him that look, the one that made her seem far older than 9, the one that reminded him so much of her mother it hurt. Except Lily's eyes held only concern, no calculation. "You never do anything fun. You work, you take care of me, you sleep. That's it." "I like taking care of you," Ethan had said softly, crouching down to her level in their small kitchen. Sunlight filtered through the curtains he'd sewn himself when they'd first moved into this apartment, the one he could actually afford on a secretary's salary. That's the fun part. But when was the last time you saw your friends? Ethan hadn't had an answer for that. The truth was, he didn't really have friends anymore. He had Lily. He had his job. He had the Parent-Teacher Association meetings, and the grocery runs, and the quiet, exhausting rhythm of single parenthood. Somewhere in the past 7 years since the divorce finalized, and Brianna had walked away with barely a backward glance, Ethan's world had narrowed to the essentials. "Please go," Lily had whispered, wrapping her thin arms around his neck. "Miss Rodriguez, next door can watch me just for one night. I want you to be happy, Dad." That's how Ethan found himself standing in front of his closet, 2 days before the reunion, staring at the limited options hanging there. His work clothes were impeccable. Maris Cole expected nothing less from her executive team, but those were suits meant for boardrooms and investor meetings. This was different. Casual elegance, the invitation had specified, whatever that meant. He'd settled on dark slacks and a charcoal sweater, the nicest things he owned that weren't strictly professional. Looking at himself in the mirror, Ethan had felt a familiar pang of inadequacy. At 42, he was still fit. Stress and constant movement kept him lean, but there were lines around his eyes now, silver threading through his dark hair. He looked tired. He looked like exactly what he was, a man who'd chosen survival over ambition. "You look handsome, Dad," Lily had declared when he emerged from his bedroom that Saturday evening. Ethan had kissed the top of her head, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. "Be good for Miss Rodriguez, okay? I'll be back before midnight." "Dad, it's a party. You're allowed to stay out late." "I'll be back before midnight," he'd repeated, smiling despite his nerves. The hotel was downtown, one of those historic buildings that had been renovated into something simultaneously classic and modern. Ethan's footsteps echoed across the lobby stone floor as he made his way toward the ballroom. Music and laughter spilled through the open doors, the kind of effortless mingling that had always made him feel like an observer rather than a participant. He recognized faces immediately. Jennifer Ashworth, who'd been student body president and now, according to the name tag she wore, was a state senator. Marcus Webb, former quarterback, shaking hands with a cluster of men who all had that same well-fed, successful glow. Claire Donovan, who'd organized the reunion, spotted him from across the room and waved enthusiastically. Ethan Parker. "Oh my God, I didn't think you'd actually come." Claire air-kissed both his cheeks, her perfume overwhelming. "You look exactly the same. What have you been up to?" "Working mostly," Ethan said, accepting the name tag she pressed into his hand. "I have a daughter now, Lily. She's 9. "How wonderful. And what do you do?" "I'm an executive secretary, corporate management." Claire's smile didn't falter, but something shifted in her eyes. That quick recollection people did when they realized you weren't as successful as they'd hoped. "That's great. Really great." Well, the bar's open and there's food in the back. Mingle. Ethan had been to enough of these things, work functions mostly, to know how to navigate. He got a sparkling water from the bar, found a quiet corner near the windows, and prepared to observe. This was his comfort zone, watching, listening, making himself small enough that people forgot he was there. He'd been content with that strategy for about 40 minutes. Then he saw her, Brianna Hale. She'd taken back her maiden name after the divorce, stood near the center of the ballroom, surrounded by an audience. She'd always been beautiful, but time and money had polished her into something almost intimidating. Designer dress, perfect hair, jewelry that caught the light with every gesture. She was telling some story, her hands moving expressively, and everyone around her was laughing. Ethan's first instinct was to leave, slip out before she noticed him. Call it a night, get back to Lily and the life that made sense. But even as he thought it, he knew Lily would be disappointed. She'd asked him to try to be part of the world again, even just for one evening. He stayed near the windows, nursing his water, telling himself it was a big room. Maybe she wouldn't see him. That hope lasted approximately 12 more minutes. Ethan Parker. Brianna's voice carried across the conversation like a blade. Is that really you? The group around her turned to look. Ethan felt his throat tighten, but he managed a small smile. Hello, Brianna. She crossed the distance between them with the confidence of someone who'd never doubted her welcome anywhere. Up close, he could see the calculation in her eyes, the same expression she'd worn during their marriage whenever she was about to ask for something she knew he couldn't afford. I didn't expect to see you here, she said, her tone friendly enough that anyone listening wouldn't hear the edge. I thought you'd be too busy with what was it? Your very important secretary job. Executive Secretary Ethan corrected quietly. I manage operations for Shay. Right. Meetings and schedules and coffee orders. She laughed, light and musical, and several people nearby chuckled along. How adorable. But how adorable. Still, the supporting role in everyone else's story. Ethan felt the familiar heat of embarrassment creeping up his neck, but he kept his voice steady. It's good work, Ilo. Like it, of course you do. You always were content with so little. Brianna turned to the small crowd that had begun to gather, drawn by the scent of drama. Did I ever tell you all about my marriage to Ethan? No. Oh, it's quite the cautionary tale. Brianna, we don't need to. Ethan started, but she talked right over him. See, I thought I was getting a partner, someone with ambition, drive, the qualities adults need to build a life together. Her smile was sharp as glass, but what I got was a man who was perfectly happy being invisible, who thought showing up was the same as succeeding, who couldn't even commit to his own potential, let alone to a marriage. The room had gotten quieter. People were definitely watching now. That mix of fascination and discomfort that came with witnessing someone being torn apart in public. Ethan recognized Marcus Webb in the crowd and Jennifer Ashworth, and a dozen other faces from classes he'd barely participated in 20 years ago. We have a daughter, Ethan said softly. Lily, oh yes. The child. Brianna's expression shifted into something that might have looked like sympathy to anyone who didn't know her. Tell me, Ethan, do you still read her those bedtime stories every night? Still doing the whole single dad martyr routine? I'm not a martyr, I'm her father. You're a man who chose limitations over possibilities. Brianna's voice rose just slightly, enough to ensure everyone could hear. You could have been anything, Ethan. Ethan could have taken risks, built something, become someone, but instead you settled for safe, for small, for enough. She gestured at him, encompassing his entire person with one dismissive wave. Look at you. You're wearing the same kind of clothes you wore in college, living the same kind of half-life. I bet you're still in that tiny apartment, aren't you? Still counting pennies and telling yourself it's novelty? Oh, struggle. Ethan felt something crack inside his chest, but he refused to let it show on his face. He'd learned long ago how to take hits without flinching. 7 years of her criticisms during their marriage had taught him that much. I provide for my daughter, he said, each word careful and measured. I keep a roof over her head, food on the table, and I'm there when she needs me. That's not settling. That's choosing what matters. How convenient that what matters is always the easiest option. Brianna laughed again, and this time more people joined in. You know what your problem is, Ethan. You think showing up is enough? You think just being present makes you a good father, a good employee, a good man? But it doesn't. It makes you background noise, a placeholder, someone people forget about the moment you leave the room. Someone in the crowd, Ethan didn't see who, muttered something about ouch and brutal. A few people shifted uncomfortably, but nobody stepped in. Nobody told Brianna to stop. This was entertainment now, a spectacle at an otherwise boring reunion. You couldn't commit to our marriage, Brianna continued, warming to her theme. You couldn't commit to being a real partner, someone who actually contributed instead of just existing. And now you're raising a child in that same half-hearted way, teaching her that mediocrity is acceptable, that aiming low is somehow virtuous. Don't talk about how I raised my daughter. Ethan's voice was quiet, but something in it made Brianna pause. You left, Brianna. You chose to walk away. You don't get to judge the life I've built without you. Built? Her eyebrows arched in exaggerated surprise. You call that building, Ethan? You're surviving barely. You're the same scared boy who was too afraid to take chances in college, too afraid to be anything more than adequate. And the saddest part, she leaned in, her voice dropping to a stage whisper that somehow carried perfectly across the silent room. You actually think you're doing well. You think this small, quiet, forgettable life is something to be proud of. Ethan didn't trust himself to speak. His hands were shaking. So he shoved them in his pockets. He could feel the weight of 200 pairs of eyes on him, watching him absorb every blow, waiting to see if he'd finally break or fight back. He didn't either, because fighting back would give Brianna exactly what she wanted. A scene, a drama, proof that she could still get under his skin. And breaking would prove every cruel thing she'd just said about him being weak, being less than, being forgettable. So Ethan stood there silent and still, and let her words wash over him like poison. Nothing to say. Brianna pressed. No defense, no grand statement about how wrong I am. She turned to her audience, spreading her hands. See, this is exactly what I lived with. A man who won't even fight for himself, who just takes it and pretends that makes him noble instead of pathetic. That's when everything changed. A hand slipped through Ethan's arm, warm fingers wrapping around his elbow with easy familiarity. The touch was confident, possessive even, and completely unexpected. Ethan turned his head, words dying in his throat. Maris Cole stood beside him, elegant in a black dress that probably cost more than his monthly rent. Her dark hair was swept up, diamond earrings catching the light, and her expression was serene, the same composed face she wore in boardroom negotiations, worth billions of dollars. Honey, she said, her voice carrying that particular tone of affectionate exasperation reserved for long-time partners. I'm so sorry I'm late. The meeting ran long and traffic was impossible. The ballroom went completely silent. Ethan's brain stuttered. Maris Cole, his boss, the woman he saw every day, in perfectly tailored suits, reviewing contracts and dismantling hostile takeover attempts before breakfast. Maris Cole, who was on the Forbes list and had once made a senator cry during a committee hearing. She was standing in a hotel ballroom with her arm linked through his calling him honey. Brianna's perfect composure flickered. I'm sorry, who? Maris Cole, she said simply, offering a hand that Brianna shook automatically, clearly still processing. And you are? Brianna Hale. I'm Ethan's ex-wife. The title came out sharp, reclaiming territory. Maris's smile didn't waver, but something cooled in her eyes. The ex-wife. How interesting. Ethan's told me so much about you. Ethan hadn't told Maris anything about Brianna beyond the bare facts required for emergency contact forms, but he was too shocked to correct her. Too busy trying to understand what was happening and why his billionaire boss was currently pressed against his side like they shared breakfast every morning. Has he? Brianna's smile had frozen into something brittle. Funny, he hasn't mentioned you at all. But then Ethan was never very good at communication or commitment or really showing up when it mattered. Maris tilted her head slightly, the gesture bird-like and predatory. That's fascinating because the Ethan I know shows up every single day early, actually. He manages an entire executive office, coordinates meetings across 3 continents, and somehow still makes it to every single one of his daughter's school events. She paused, her smile sharpening. Lily, isn't it such a sweet child? We had dinner last week. She makes excellent spaghetti. Ethan's mind reeled. That had been a Wednesday night when he'd invited Miss Rodriguez over to thank her for watching Lily so often. Maris had been there too, having stopped by to drop off contracts that couldn't wait until morning. She'd stayed for exactly 1 p. till morning. She'd stayed for exactly 1 p. late of Lily's enthusiastically over-seasoned pasta before excusing herself, but the way Mary's told it, you'd think she was a regular fixture at their dinner table. You've met his daughter. Rihanna's voice had gotten higher, tighter. Of course, several times, Maris's hand moved from Ethan's elbow to his back, a casual intimacy that sent electricity down his spine. Ethan's the kind of father who puts his child first always, even when it costs him professionally. Which, by the way, it doesn't, because some of us recognize that a man who honors his commitments in one area of life will honor them in all areas. The crowd had shifted. People were whispering now, phones subtly emerging to Google Maris Cole to confirm what their instincts were already telling them. This wasn't just some woman. This was someone important, someone powerful, someone who didn't show up to college reunions unless there was a very specific reason. Brianna's eyes narrowed. "I'm sorry. What did you say your relationship to Ethan is?" Maris looked at Ethan, and for just a moment he saw something flicker across her face. A question, maybe, or an apology for what she was about to do. Then she looked back at Brianna, and her expression settled into absolute certainty. "I'm the woman who knows his worth," she said simply. "Which is apparently something you never figured out." The ballroom erupted in barely suppressed reactions. Gasps, mutters, the sound of someone choking on their drink. Marcus Webb was grinning openly. Claire Donovan had her phone out recording. Brianna's face had gone pale, then flushed with anger. "That's a lovely story, but I think we all know what this really is. Some pity date, a favor for the help, because let's be honest," she gestured at Ethan again, cruel and dismissive. "What else would someone like you be doing with someone like him, someone like me?" Maris's voice dropped 20 degrees. "Let me clarify something for you, Miss Hale. I'm the CEO of Cole Industries. I run a company with 43,000 employees across 6 continents. I have investment portfolios that could buy and sell your entire social circle before lunch. So when I choose to spend my limited personal time with someone, it's because that person has something no amount of money can buy. Integrity, intelligence, and the kind of quiet strength that most people are too shallow to recognize." She turned to Ethan and her expression softened. "Honey, I think we should go. I promised Lily we'd be home before she went to bed, and I'd hate to disappoint her." Ethan found his voice finally, though it came out rough. "Mary's, you don't have to. I want to," she said firmly. Then to Brianna and the watching crowd, "It's been educational meeting you all, particularly you, Miss Hale. I can see why Ethan doesn't talk about you much. Some chapters aren't worth rereading." She guided Ethan toward the exit, her hand still on his back, moving through the parted crowd like a ship cutting through water. What ship cutting through water? Ethan felt numb, disconnected from his body, aware only of the whispers following them, and Brianna's stricken expression, and the fact that his entire understanding of reality had just been fundamentally altered. They made it to the lobby before Ethan finally pulled away, turning to face Maris with a confusion that bordered on panic. "What just happened?" he asked. How did you even know I was here?" Maris's composure slipped just slightly. She looked suddenly uncertain, an expression Ethan had never seen on her face in 4 years of working together. "Your daughter called me Lily? Lily called you?" "This afternoon from Miss Rodriguez's phone." Maris clasped her hands in front of her, a tell Ethan recognized from difficult negotiations. "She was worried about you coming here alone. She thought you might need backup, and apparently, I was the only person she could think of who might help." Ethan's chest tightened. "I'm so sorry she shouldn't have bothered you with. She wasn't wrong to be worried." Maris cut in. "That woman in there was trying to destroy you in front of everyone you used to know. She wanted to humiliate you, make you look small and forgettable and pathetic." Her voice hardened. "And you were going to let her. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of a fight," Ethan said quietly. "There's a difference between choosing your battles and letting yourself be a victim." Mara stepped closer, and in her heels she was almost eye level with him. "You are not forgettable, Ethan. You're not background noise. You're not any of the things she said. You don't have to pretend." "I'm not pretending." The words came out, sharp, almost angry. "Do you think I'd be here if I was pretending? Do you think I'd put my reputation on the line for a publicity stunt?" Ethan shook his head, overwhelmed. "Then why? Why would you do this?" Maris was silent for a long moment, and when she spoke, her voice was softer than he'd ever heard it. "Because Lily asked me to. Because she loves her father and she's terrified that he's becoming invisible. And because—" She hesitated, then continued. "Because I've spent 4 years watching you be exceptional at a job most people can't handle for 4 months. I've watched you sacrifice promotions because they'd mean less time with your daughter. I've seen you stay late to cover for colleagues, arrive early to prepare for my meetings, handle crises with grace and competence that should be legendary." She reached out, straightening his collar in a gesture that felt both professional and impossibly intimate. "And I've never once told you how much I value you, how essential you are, how much I've come to respect, not just your work, but who you are as a person." So when your daughter called me crying, a fire, skiing if I could please make sure you were okay tonight, I realized something. What? Ethan whispered. That she's not the only one who sees you, Ethan. I see you too. I always have. The lobby seemed to tilt slightly. Ethan gripped the edge of a nearby chair to steady himself. Maris, I don't understand what's happening right now. Neither do I. Completely, she admitted, and there was something vulnerable in her expression now, something almost frightened. I came here tonight, planning to play a role, to be your backup, like Lily asked, to make sure that awful woman couldn't hurt you. She laughed softly without humor. But standing in there listening to her tear you apart, watching you take it because you're too good to fight dirty. I realized I wasn't pretending at all. You can't mean I don't know what I mean yet, Mari said honestly. I know you're my employee. I know there are rules and complications and a dozen reasons this conversation should never be happening. She met his eyes directly, and Ethan saw real uncertainty there, real fear, but I also know that woman in there is wrong about you. Completely fundamentally wrong, and I couldn't stand there and let her be right. Ethan's phone buzzed. He pulled it out automatically. Saw Lily's name on the screen. A text from Miss Rodriguez's phone. Did Miss Cole find you? Are you okay, Dad? He showed the message to Maris, who smiled despite herself. She's worried about you. She worries too much, Ethan said. But his voice was thick with emotion. She's 9. She should be thinking about dolls and friends, not about whether her dad is okay at a college reunion. She's thinking about it because she loves you, Mari said gently. Because she loves you, Mary said gently. And because she's smart enough to see what you can't, that you deserve better than silence in the face of cruelty. Ethan looked at his phone at Mary's at the ballroom doors where he could still hear music and low, utter and probably endless speculation about what they'd all just witnessed. I should go home. Yes, Maris agreed. You should. She hesitated, then added, I'll follow you. Make sure you get there safely. You don't have to. Ethan. She touched his arm brief and light. Let me do this for Lily, if not for you. They walked to the parking garage. In silence, Maris's heels clicking against concrete, Ethan's thoughts racing too fast to catch. His car, a reliable sedan that had seen better years, was parked near the elevator. Maris's vehicle, a sleek black Tesla, was 3 spots away. Thank you, Ethan said, unlocking his door. For tonight, for what you did in there. I know it was just don't, Marius interrupted. Don't diminish it by calling it just anything. What happened tonight mattered to me, to Lily, and whether you want to admit it or not, to you. She walked to her car without waiting for a response, and Ethan stood there, key in hand, wondering if everything he'd believed about his life had just been proven wrong. The drive home took 20 minutes. Maris's headlights followed him the entire way, a constant presence in his rear-view mirror. When he pulled into his apartment complex, modest, safe, exactly as Brianna had described, she pulled in behind him, parking in the visitor's spot. They walked up the 2 flights of stairs together, and Ethan found himself acutely aware of every detail. The chipped paint on the railing, the threadbare carpet, the sound of a neighbor's television through thin walls. This was his life, small, simple, exactly as Brianna had said, but Maris didn't seem to see it that way. She looked around with genuine interest, not judgment. Ms. Rodriguez opened the door before Ethan could use his key, Lily right behind her. The moment Lily saw him, saw both of them, her face split into a relieved smile. Dad, men, Cole, you're both here. Ethan crouched. Owen and Lily threw herself into his arms with the fierce certainty of a child who'd been more worried than she'd let on. Hey, sweetheart, everything okay? I was scared, Lily whispered into his shoulder. I know I shouldn't have called Miss Cole, but I didn't want you to be alone. And I thought maybe she could help because she's so smart and strong. You did good, Ethan said, surprising himself. He looked up at Maris, who was watching them with an expression he couldn't quite read. You did really good, Lily. Miss meant Marnie. You did really good, Lily. Miss Rodriguez excused herself with a knowing smile, and suddenly it was just the 3 of them in Ethan's small living room. Him, his daughter, and the billionaire CEO who just upended his entire understanding of the world. Did it work? Lily asked. Looking between them, did Miss Misnaughton of the world, did it work? Lily asked. Cole help. She helped a lot, Ethan said honestly. Good. Lily turned to Maris with absolute seriousness. Thank you for taking care of my dad. He always takes care of everyone else, but sometimes he needs someone too. Maris knelt down, elegant dress and all, to be at Lily's eye level. Your father is one of the best men I know. Lily, don't ever let anyone tell you different. I won't, Lily promised. Then, with the brutal honesty of 9-year-olds, Are you guys dating now? Because that would be really cool. Lily. Ethan felt his face flush, but Maris just laughed, the sound genuine and warm. That's a very good question, and I think your dad and I need to figure out the answer ourselves before we share it with anyone else, even you. She stood, smoothing her dress, but I promise you this, whatever happens, I'll always value your father, always respect him, always see him for who he really is. Lily seemed satisfied with that. She hugged Maris with the unself-conscious affection of a child who decided someone was safe, then yawned dramatically. I should probably go to bed. Probably, then agreed, his heart still racing. He tucked Lily in, listened to her chatter about her evening with Miss Rodriguez, kissed her forehead, and promised her everything was okay. When he emerged from her bedroom, Maris was standing by the window, looking out at the city lights. I should go, she said without turning around. It's late, and Monday is going to be complicated enough without Maris. Ethan crossed the small space between them. What you said in there in the lobby, did you mean it? She finally looked at him and her expression was raw in a way he'd never seen. Every word. Then what happens now? I don't know, she admitted. This is uncharted territory for me, Ethan. I don't do this. I don't cross professional lines. I don't put myself in positions where I'm vulnerable or uncertain, or she broke off frustrated. I spent 4 years being your boss, being professional, being appropriate, and then your daughter called me crying and none of that mattered anymore. Ethan took a careful step closer. What mattered? You, Mary said simply. You mattered. You always have. I just didn't let myself acknowledge it because acknowledging it meant risking everything we built professionally. But tonight, watching you stand there while she tried to make you invisible, I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't pretend I didn't see you, didn't value you. Didn't she stop herself, shaking her head? I'm not saying this right. You're saying it perfectly, Ethan said quietly. You're saying it perfectly, Ethan said quietly. They stood there in his small living room, the space between them charged with possibility and fear, and something neither was quite ready to name. Outside, the city hummed with late-night traffic. Inside, everything was still. Take Monday off, Mary said finally, her professional voice sliding back into place like armor. You've earned it, and we both need time to think about what happens next. And if what happens next is complicated, a smile ghosted across her face, then we'll handle it the way we handle everything else, with intelligence, integrity, and a complete disregard for what people think we should do. She moved toward the door and Ethan followed, not ready for her to leave, but not sure how to ask her to stay. At the threshold, Maris paused. Ethan, what that woman said tonight, about you being forgettable, being background noise, she couldn't have been more wrong. Maris met his eyes, steady and certain. You're the person people notice when it matters, when everything is falling apart and someone needs to hold it together. When the work is hard and unglamorous and essential, that's when people see you. That's when you shine. I don't feel like I shine, Ethan said honestly. I know, that's what makes it real. She touched his cheek just briefly, her hand warm against his skin. Get some sleep, take care of Lily, and remember, you don't have to be loud to be seen, not by the people who matter. She left, and Ethan stood in his doorway, watching her walk down the stairs, elegant and powerful and somehow more human than she'd ever seemed before. Inside, his phone buzzed with incoming messages. He pulled it out, saw the reunion group chat had exploded with speculation. Someone had posted a photo, Maris's arm through his, the two of them looking at each other, her expression fierce and protective. There were questions, theories, a dozen people suddenly, remembering they'd always thought Ethan was great. Actually, Marcus Webb had sent a direct message. Dude, holy, that was incredible. But the message that mattered came from an unknown number. This is Claire. I just wanted to say Brianna planned that ambush. She told several of us beforehand that she was going to put you in your place tonight. What she did wasn't spontaneous. It was calculated. And after what happened, after your girlfriend partner stepped in, Brianna left. She's humiliated. Everyone's talking about how classy Miss Cole was and how cruel Brianna looked in comparison. I thought you should know. Ethan read the message 3 times, feeling something settle in his chest. Brianna had planned it, had orchestrated his humiliation like a performance. And still, even knowing that, he didn't feel angry. He felt free, because Maris was right. He didn't have to fight in Brianna's way to win. He didn't have to defend himself against calculated cruelty. He just had to keep being who he was, showing up, staying honest, choosing what mattered, and somehow, miraculously, that had been enough. In her room, Lily was already asleep. her nightlight casting soft shadows across her peaceful face. Ethan stood in the doorway, watching her breathe, and felt gratitude wash over him so completely it hurt. This was his life. Small apartment, tight budget, simple routines. But it was also Lily's laughter and Ms. Rodriguez's kindness, and a job that challenged him, and now impossibly Mary's Cole, looking at him like he was something precious she'd only just discovered. He thought about Monday, about going back to work and facing whatever came next, about navigating the complicated space between professional and personal, between what was safe and what might be extraordinary. And for the first time in 7 years, Ethan Parker let himself imagine a future that included more than just survival, that included possibility, that included being seen, truly seen by someone who understood exactly what that meant. In his pocket, his phone buzzed one more time. He pulled it out, saw Maris's name. Just 3 words sent at nearly midnight. "Sleep well, honey." Ethan smiled in the darkness of his quiet apartment, and for the first time all night, he felt like everything was exactly where it was supposed to be. Ethan Day. I didn't sleep well. He lay in bed staring at a ceiling, replaying every moment of the evening until the details blurred together into something that felt more like a fever dream than reality. Around 3 o'clock in the morning, he finally drifted off, only to wake 2 hours later to Lily jumping on his bed. Dad, wake up. It's Sunday. You promised we'd make pancakes." He groaned, pulling a pillow over his face. "Lily, it's 5 o'clock in the morning." "It's almost 6 o'clock," she corrected, tugging the pillow away. Her face was bright with excitement. No trace of the worry from last night. "Come on, I want to hear everything about the reunion." Ethan sat up slowly, his body aching with exhaustion. "There's not much to tell," Miss Rodriguez said. "Miss Cole came to help you. She said you both looked really happy when you came home." Lily bounced on her knees, making the mattress squeak. "So, what happened? Did you have fun? Did everyone remember you? Did Miss Cole really pretend to be your girlfriend?" "She didn't pretend," Ethan said carefully, then realized how that sounded. "I mean, she didn't say she was my girlfriend exactly. She helped me with a difficult situation." What kind of difficult situation? Ethan debated how much to share. Lily was 9, perceptive beyond her years, but still a child. He didn't want to burden her with the ugliness of what Brianna had tried to do, but he also didn't want to lie. "Your mom was there," he said finally, "and she said some things that weren't very kind. Miss Cole stood up for me." Lily's expression darkened. "Mom was mean to you. She was trying to be," Ethan admitted, "but it didn't work the way she wanted it to, because Miss Cole protected you. Something like that." Lily threw her arms around his neck, squeezing tight. "Good. You deserve someone who protects you, Dad. You always protect everyone else." Ethan held his daughter, breathing in the strass. Berry scent of her hair, and felt his chest tighten with emotion. "When did you get so wise?" "Huh. I've always been wise. You just don't notice because you're busy being responsible." She pulled back, grinning. "Now, can we please make pancakes? I'm starving." They made pancakes together, Lily chattering about her evening with Miss Rodriguez, while Ethan tried to focus on not burning breakfast. His phone kept buzzing on the counter, more messages from the reunion group chat, a few texts from former classmates he barely remembered, one missed call from a number he didn't recognize, and 3 messages from Morris sent early that morning. The first, "I hope you slept better than I did." The second, "We should talk, really talk. Not Monday, sooner." The third, "Are you free this afternoon? I could come by, or we could meet somewhere neutral if that's easier." Ethan stared at the messages while Lily drowned her pancakes in syrup. Neutral territory would be safer, more appropriate, but the thought of having this conversation in a coffee shop or restaurant where anyone might overhear or recognize them made his stomach turn. He typed back, "Lily has soccer at 2 o'clock. After that, you could come over around 4. The response came within seconds. "I'll be there." Lily looked up from her breakfast, syrup on her chin. "Who are you texting?" "Miss Cole. She's coming over this afternoon." "Really?" Lily's face lit up. "Is she coming for dinner? Can I show her my science project? Oh, can we make that pasta she liked last time?" "I think she's just coming to talk," Ethan said carefully. "Adult stuff. Boring." "Talking to Miss Cole is never boring," Lily declared with absolute certainty. "She knows everything about everything. Last time she was here, she helped me with my math homework and explained compound interest, using Pokemon cards. It was amazing." Ethan smiled despite his nerves. That sounded exactly like Mari, taking a 9-year-old interest seriously. Meeting her where she was. It was the same quality that made her such an effective CEO. She never talked down to people, never dismissed perspectives just because they came from unexpected sources. The morning passed in a blur of normal Sunday activities, laundry, grocery shopping, Lily practicing her dribbling in the parking lot before soccer. Ethan watched her run drills with the other kids, their shouts echoing across the field, and tried not to think about what 4 o'clock would bring. But his mind wouldn't cooperate. It kept circling back to the lobby, to Morris's face when she'd said she wasn't pretending, to the way her hand had felt against his cheek, warm and certain and impossibly gentle. A shadow fell across him, and Ethan looked up to find another soccer parent settling onto the bench beside him, Rachel Kim, whose daughter Maya was Lily's best friend. They chatted dozens of times about pickup logistics and school events, the easy surface-level friendship of parents thrown together by their children's activities. "Hey, Ethan," Rachel said, her tone carefully casual. "So I saw something interesting online this morning." Ethan's stomach sank. "Oh, someone from your college reunion posted photos. You and a very elegant woman who apparently put your ex-wife in her place." Rachel raised her eyebrows. "Care to share?" "It's complicated," Ethan managed. "It always is with exes." Rachel's expression softened into something like sympathy. "For what it's worth, the comments were all on your side. People were saying your ex was way out of line. And the mystery woman marries Cole, right, was incredible, classy, and fierce." She paused. "Also, people were very impressed that you're apparently dating a billionaire CEO. We're not." Ethan stopped himself. "What were they exactly?" "It's not what it looks like. Ethan, I've known you for 2 years. I've watched you juggle work and parenting like a champion, always showing up even when you're clearly exhausted. If anyone deserves someone amazing, it's you." Rachel stood as the coach called the kids in for a water break. "Don't talk yourself out of good things just because they seem too big. Sometimes the universe gets it right." She walked away before Ethan could respond, leaving him alone with thoughts that refused to settle into any coherent pattern. The soccer game ended with Lily's team winning 3-2. She was flushed and happy, talking nonstop about the goal she'd almost scored as they drove home. Ethan listened, responding at the right moments, but his mind was already racing ahead to 4 o'clock. They got back to the apartment at 3:30. Lily showered and changed while Ethan straightened the living room, suddenly seeing it through Maria's eyes. The furniture was mismatched, collected from thrift stores and handmounds. The art on the walls was Lily's school projects in cheap frames. Everything was clean, but worn, loved, but clearly budget-conscious. Last night, Mary's hadn't seemed to notice or care, but last night had been charged with adrenaline and emotion, and Lily's grateful hugs. Today would be different. Today they'd have to actually talk about what had happened, what it meant, where they went from here. The knock came at exactly 4 o'clock. Mary's was nothing if not punctual. Ethan opened the door to find her in jeans and a sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. He'd never seen her in casual clothes before. At work, she was all sleek suits and perfectly styled professionalism. This version of her felt both more approachable and somehow more intimidating. "Hi," she said, and there was uncertainty in her voice that made Ethan's heart clench. "Hi, come in." Lily appeared from her room the moment Maris crossed the threshold. "Miss Cole, you're here. Do you want to see my science project? It's about renewable energy, and I made a model wind turbine out of recyclables." Maris's smile was genuine, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly. "I would love to see it, Lily, but I think your dad and I need to talk about some grown-up things first. Would that be okay?" Lily looked between them, her expression turning serious. "Are you guys going to talk about last night? About how you saved Dad from Mom?" "Something like that," Mary said gently. "Okay. But afterwards, wind turbine, promise." "I promise." Lily retreated to her room with obvious reluctance, closing the door but probably pressing her ear against it the moment she thought they couldn't hear. Ethan gestured to the couch and Mara sat, her hands folded in her lap. The silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unsaid. "I don't know how to start this conversation," Maris admitted finally. "I've run billion-dollar negotiations without breaking a sweat, but sitting here with you, I don't have the first clue what to say." "You could start with the truth," Ethan suggested quietly. "Why did you really come last night?" "I told you. Lily called me, and you came running because a 9-year-old asked you to. Morris, you don't do spontaneous. You plan everything 3 moves ahead. So what was really going on?" Morris was quiet for a long moment, her gaze fixed on her hands. When she spoke, her voice was softer than he'd ever heard it. "Do you remember the Hendricks merger 3 months ago? Ethan frowned at the apparent subject change. Of course, you were negotiating around the clock for 2 weeks straight. Do you remember what happened on day 13? He thought back, pulling up the memory. Day 13 had been brutal. Mary's had been in back-to-back meetings from 6 o'clock in the morning, and around 8 at night, the other side had tried to spring a last-minute change that would have gutted the entire deal. Ethan had been the one to catch it, buried in an appendix most people wouldn't have read carefully. He'd interrupted the meeting, something he never did, to point out the discrepancy. You caught their attempt to renegotiate terms, Ethan said slowly. Saved us from signing away leverage we'd spent 2 weeks building. You saved me from making a $100 million mistake, Maris corrected, and when I asked you later why you'd been reading the full appendices at 8 o'clock on a Friday night when you should have been home with Lily, do you remember what you said? Ethan shifted uncomfortably. I said it was my job. You said it was your job, to make sure I had everything I needed to succeed. Maris finally looked up and her eyes were bright with emotion. Not the company, not the shareholders. Me, you said you were there to make sure I succeeded. That's what an executive secretary does. No, Ethan, that's what someone who cares does. She leaned forward slightly, her intensity focused entirely on him. I went home that night and I realized I'd been thinking about you differently for months, maybe longer. The way you always arrived early with my coffee exactly how I like it. The way you remembered every detail I mentioned in passing. My mother's birthday, that I was nervous about a board meeting, that I'd been too busy to eat lunch. The way you made my impossible schedule somehow manageable while raising a daughter on your own and never once complaining. I was doing my job, Ethan repeated, but his voice had gotten rough. You were doing so much more than your job, and I think part of me knew it, but I couldn't acknowledge it. Because acknowledging it meant admitting I'd started looking forward to seeing you every morning. That your quiet competence had become the most stable thing in my chaotic world. That somewhere along the way you'd stopped being just my secretary and started being. She broke off, shaking her head. I don't even know what word to use. Essential, Ethan suggested quietly. Essential, Mary's agreed. Irreplaceable. Important in ways that have nothing to do with work and everything to do with who you are as a person. Ethan felt like the ground was shifting beneath him. So when Lily called me crying, saying her dad was going to face his ex-wife alone and she was scared he'd get hurt, I didn't even think. I just got in my car and drove. Maris's hands twisted together, the only sign of her nervousness. I told myself I was doing it for her, being a good boss, helping an employee's child. But the moment I walked into that ballroom and saw you standing there while that woman tried to destroy you, her voice hardened. I wanted to destroy her. I wanted to make her hurt the way she was hurting you. And that's when I knew. Knew what? That this stopped being professional a long time ago. Mary's met his eyes directly. Maybe it was never professional. Not really. Maybe I've been lying to myself for years, telling myself I valued you as an employee, when what I actually felt was so much more complicated than that. Ethan's heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. Mary, you're my boss. There are rules about this kind of thing. Policies. You could get in trouble. I don't care about the policies, Maris said fiercely. I care about you. I care about the fact that you're brilliant and kind, and you sacrifice yourself daily for people who don't even notice. I care that you're raising an incredible daughter while working a demanding job, and somehow still managing to be the most honorable man I've ever met. And I care that someone tried to make you feel small last night when you are anything but. I am small, Ethan said quietly. Compared to you, compared to what you've built, if you say you're ordinary, I'm going to lose my mind. Mary sate, good abruptly, pacing to the window. You are not ordinary, Ethan. You're not forgettable. You're not any of the things she said. You're the person who keeps an entire executive office running smoothly while dealing with impossible demands and constant chaos. You're the father who never misses a school event, even when it means staying up until midnight to finish work. You're the man who covers for colleagues without seeking credit, who solves problems before I even know they exist, who makes everyone around you better just by being exactly who you are. She turned back to face him, and there were tears in her eyes now. So no, you're not small, you're not ordinary, and I'm done pretending I don't see you for who you really are. Ethan stood slowly, his legs unsteady. What are you saying? I'm saying, I want to try. I want to figure out what this is between us. Policies and complications be damned. I want to. She stopped herself, visibly struggling. I want to take you to dinner. Real dinner, not business. I want to get to know Lily better. Not as your boss, but as someone who cares about you both. I want to see if this thing I've been feeling for months, maybe years, is something real or just my imagination running wild. And if it's real, Ethan's voice came out as barely more than a whisper. Then we figure it out together, Mary said simply, one step at a time, carefully. Honestly, the way you approach everything in your life. They stood there, the afternoon light slanting through the window between them, and Ethan felt the last of his resistance crumble, because she was right. This thing between them, whatever it was, had been building for longer than he'd let himself acknowledge. Every morning when she smiled at him over her coffee. Every late night when they'd work side by side, comfortable in shared silence. Every moment when she'd treated him, not as staff but as an EQ, someone whose opinion mattered, whose presence she valued. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. I haven't dated in 7 years. I have a daughter who comes first, always. I work for you, which makes everything complicated. And I'm terrified that if we try this and it doesn't work, I'll lose the best job I've ever had. And Lily will lose someone she's starting to care about. I'm terrified too, Mary said. I've spent my entire adult life building walls between my personal and professional life. I don't let people in. I don't take risks with relationships because I've seen how badly they can end. But Ethan, she crossed the space between them, close enough that he could smell her perfume. I think you're worth the risk. I think we might be worth the risk. What about work? What about the policies? I'll talk to HR. We'll do this properly. Disclose the relationship. Establish boundaries, if necessary. I'll shift you to report to someone else. Though the thought of not having you as my assistant makes me want to cry. A small smile touched her lips. But I'd rather have you in my life, honestly, than keep you at work through professional distance. Ethan reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he took her hand, marveling at how perfectly it fit in his. This is crazy. Probably, Maris agreed. Is that a yes? Before Ethan could answer, Lily's door flew open. Are you guys done talking? Because I really need to show Miss Cole my wind turbine. And also, I'm supposed to tell you that Miss Rodriguez is making empanadas if you want to stay for dinner. Miss Cole, and Dad, you should probably say yes to whatever Miss Cole just asked you, because you have that face you get when you're happy, but trying not to show it. Mary's laughed, the sound bright and genuine. What face is that? The soft one, Lily said, matter of exactly. The one he gets when I show him my good test score, or when we watch movies together. The one that means he's happy but doesn't want to make a big deal about it because he thinks being happy is showing off or something. I do not think that, Ethan protested weakly. You totally do, Lily insisted. She looked at Maris with absolute seriousness. So, are you going to date my dad or what? Because that would be really cool. And also, I already told Maya Kim that you were basically my dad's girlfriend after last night, and she said her mom saw the photos online, and everyone thinks you guys are perfect together. Lily, Ethan felt his face burn. You can't just, we haven't even. It's okay, Mary said, squeezing his hand. She looked at Lily with the same respect she gave to board members and investors. I would very much like to date your dad, Lily, if he says yes and if you're okay with it. I'm totally okay with it, Lily said immediately. Dad deserves someone awesome, and you're like the most awesome person I know, besides Dad and Maya, and maybe M. Rodriguez, because she makes really good empanadas. High praise, Maris said solemnly. So, is that a yes, Dad? Lily looked at Ethan expectantly. Because you're still doing the face. Ethan looked at his daughter, bright and hopeful, and so certain that good things were possible, and then at Maris, who was watching him with an expression that made his heart ache in the best possible way. Yes, he said quietly. It's a yes. Lily cheered and immediately grabbed Maris's free hand, tugging her toward the bedroom. Great, now you have to see my wind turbine. I use plastic bottles and cardboard, and it actually spins when you blow on it. Come on. Maris let herself be dragged away, glancing back at Ethan with a smile that held equal parts amusement and wonder. And Ethan stood alone in his living room, holding on to the ghost of her touch, and tried to process the fact that his entire life had just changed. In the space of 24 hours, his phone buzzed. Another message in the reunion group chat. This one from Marcus Webb. Just want to say whatever happened with you and Maris Cole, it's the best thing I've seen in years. Brianna left the reunion early, looking like she'd been hit by a truck. Everyone's talking about how classy your girl was and how desperate Brianna looked, trying to tear you down. You won, man. Completely. Ethan stared at the message, then deleted the group chat entirely. He didn't need their validation. didn't need to know what people were saying or thinking or speculating about, because Marcus was wrong about one thing. This wasn't about winning or losing. It was about choosing something real over something safe, about letting himself be seen, truly seen by someone who actually understood what they were looking at. From Lily's room, he heard laughter. Maris's low and warm, Lily's high and delighted. He followed the sound, stopping in the doorway to watch them bent over the science project together. Maris asking technical questions and Lily explaining with the passionate intensity of a child who'd found her audience. Maris looked up, caught him watching, and smiled. Not the professional smile she wore at work or the polite one she used with clients. This was soft and private, and meant just for him. And Ethan thought maybe, just maybe, Rachel Kim had been right. Sometimes the universe got it right. Sometimes good things weren't too big. Sometimes they were exactly the right size, arriving at exactly the right moment if you were brave enough to reach for them. "Dad, you have to hear this," Lily called out. "Mem Cole knows about sustainable energy grids, and she says my wind turbine design could actually work on a bigger scale if we adjusted the blade angle." Ethan crossed the room, settling on the floor beside them, and let himself fall into the easy rhythm of Lily's enthusiasm and Maris's genuine interest. Outside, the afternoon faded into evening. Miss Rodriguez's empanadas would be ready soon tomorrow. He'd have to figure out how to navigate work with this new reality hanging between them. But right now, in this moment, with his daughter happy and Maris's shoulder warm against his, Ethan Parker let himself believe that maybe he deserved this. Maybe he'd earned it, one small act of showing up at a time until someone finally noticed all the quiet ways he'd been extraordinary all along. And maybe that was enough. Monday morning arrived with all the subtlety of a freight train. Ethan woke at 5:30, his usual time, and lay in bed staring at the ceiling while his mind raced through every possible scenario for how today could go catastrophically wrong. Mary's had told him to take the day off, but that felt like hiding, and Ethan had never been good at hiding from difficult things. He made coffee, packed Lily's lunch, and tried to ignore the nervous energy vibrating through his entire body. Maris had stayed for dinner last night, charming Mrs. Rodriguez and making Lily laugh until she had hiccups. She'd left around 8, squeezing Ethan's hand at the door and promising they'd figure out the work situation together. But alone in the pre-dawn quiet of his kitchen, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that he'd made a terrible mistake, that walking into Cole Industries today would expose them both to judgment and gossip and complications. Neither of them had fully thought through. His phone lit up with the message from Maris. "I know you're awake and spiraling. Stop. We're going to be fine. See you at 9 o'clock for our regular morning meeting." Despite everything, Ethan smiled. She knew him too well. He got Lily ready for school, deflecting her excited questions about whether Miss Cole was his girlfriend, now with vague answers that satisfied neither of them. At the bus stop, Maya Kim bounced over immediately. "Lily says your dad has a girlfriend, and she's super rich and pretty," Maya announced at full volume. Lily hissed, her face turning red. "Is it true?" Maya's mother, Rachel, appeared behind her daughter, giving Ethan an amused look. "Because if it is, good for you." "It's complicated," Ethan managed, watching the school bus approach with relief. "Everything worth having is complicated," Rachel said easily. "Just don't overthink it to death, Ethan. You have a tendency to do that." The girls climbed onto the bus, already deep in conversation. Rachel patted Ethan's shoulder before heading to her car, leaving him alone with his thoughts and the growing certainty that everyone in his life was going to have an opinion about this. The drive to Cole Industries took 35 minutes through morning traffic. Ethan had made this commute 5 days a week for 4 years, but today it felt different. He parked in his usual spot in the employee garage, rode the elevator to the 43rd floor, and stepped into the executive suite he'd helped run for longer than most people lasted in these high-pressure positions. Janet from accounting was already at the coffee station. She looked up when Ethan entered, her expression doing a complicated journey from normal Monday morning exhaustion to something between curiosity and awe. "Ethan, you're here. I thought you'd taken the day off." "Change of plans," Ethan said, heading for his desk. "So, is it true?" Janet followed him, lowering her voice conspirationally. "About you and Miss Cole. 'Cause there are photos circulating and people are talking, and honestly, good for you. But also, how did that even happen?" Ethan set his bag down carefully, buying time. "I'd rather not discuss my personal life at work, Janet." "Right, of course. Totally professional." She paused for exactly 3 seconds, but seriously, she stood up for you in front of your awful ex-wife. That's so romantic. Like something from a movie, Janet. Please, she held up her hands in surrender. Okay, but just so you know, everyone's on your side. The photos made you both look amazing and your ex-wife look like a nightmare. So, whatever happens, you've got support. She left and Ethan sank into his desk chair already exhausted. It wasn't even 7 o'clock in the morning and the gossip had already started. By lunchtime, the entire building would probably know or think they knew what was happening between him and Morris. He pulled up his calendar, reviewing the day's schedule. Mary's had back-to-back meetings from 9 until 3, a brief window for paperwork, then a conference call with the Singapore office at 4 o'clock. Normal Monday chaos. Ethan started preparing materials for the morning meetings, falling into the familiar rhythm of his work. At 8:45, the private elevator dinged. Mary stepped out, elegant in a navy suit, her hair pulled back in a sleek bun. She looked every inch the powerful CEO, completely composed and professional. Her eyes found Ethan immediately, and something softened in her expression. "Good morning, Ethan." "Good morning, Miss Cole." She paused, a slight smile touching her lips. "Still Miss Cole here. I thought we should keep things professional at work," Ethan said carefully, aware that Janet had reappeared and was pretending to organize files while clearly eavesdropping. Of course, Maris's tone was perfectly neutral, but her eyes held warmth. "Could you bring the Hendricks files to my office? We should review before the 9 o'clock. Ethan gathered the materials and followed her into her private office, closing the door behind them. The moment they were alone, Maris's professional mask slipped slightly. "You didn't take the day off," she said. "I don't hide from difficult things. This doesn't have to be difficult. Tea." She moved closer, close enough that Ethan could smell her perfume. "We disclose the relationship to HR, establish clear boundaries at work, and conduct ourselves professionally. People will talk for a few days, then something else will become interesting, and they'll move on. And if they don't move on, if this becomes a distraction or causes problems for you, then we handle it." Maris reached out, straightening his tie, even though it was already perfectly straight. "Together, that's what this means, Ethan. You don't have to carry everything alone anymore." A knock interrupted them. Mies stepped back smoothly, her expression shifting back into professional mode. "Come in." The door opened to reveal David Chen, the CFO, looking harried. "Maris, we have a situation with the Singapore contract. They're pushing back on the timeline," and he noticed Ethan nodded politely. "Morning, Ethan." David. Ethan handed the Hendricks files to Maris. "I'll let you handle this. I have the conference room set up for your 9 o'clock. He left them to their crisis management, grateful for the interruption. In the outer office, more people had arrived. The why?